Hello, everyone. My name is Angela Walton-Raji, and I'm delighted to be here. And I'm here to speak with the grandchildren of Sarah Rector, Campbell, Howard. I think I have all of her names, and but I'm just thrilled. The world, of course, knows her story as Sarah Rector. Those who were alive in the earlier part of Sarah's life read about her life, obviously, in the national press as the richest colored girl in America. But there's a lot more to it than one would see from sensational headlines. So I'm here and delighted to welcome members. These are some of the direct descendants of Sarah Rector and her family. And I would love for you all to please introduce yourselves and share with our viewers how you are connected to Sarah Rector. And I will begin by calling on those in order that you appear on my screen. I see Miss Sharon, who is there. Would you introduce yourself, where you live, and how do you connect to Sarah Rector?
Gladly. My name is Sharon R. Campbell Marshall, and I am the older of the descendants of Sarah Rector. There started out to be eight of us, and a few have passed on, but we still have four here strong and happy to be doing this podcast with you with regard to our grandmother, who we all miss dearly. So,
Oh.
and I'm born here in Kansas City, Missouri. I've been here lifelong and still a resident of.
So, of course, as the oldest, I will probably ask you a few more questions because you may have the longer memory of Sarah. But thank you for
Yes.
introducing yourself. And next on my screen is a namesake of Sarah Rector. That's Miss Sarah Campbell. Please introduce yourself to our viewers.
Yes, thank you so much. First of all, thank you for having us. I truly appreciate it. My name is Sarah Campbell, as you stated, the namesake of my grandmother, Sarah Rector. I too, born and raised in Kansas City and live in a suburb of the city in Kansas City, Missouri. So
Okay.
thank you for having us.
Where do you fit among all the children in the family then? Are you the youngest grandchild, the second oldest? Where do you fit in the line?
The
I am
baby.
I am
Oh,
actually the youngest. Yes,
see, an
yes,
older
I'm the
sister
youngest.
had to chime in there.
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
my
so
my
you are
mom
the
still calls me the baby, but I'm the youngest.
okay, very good,
Mhm.
very good. Well, Miss Cheryl, you are next on my screen.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again for having us.
You're
I'm
welcome.
Cheryl Fleming, Cheryl Campbell Fleming, and I'm second to the youngest of the children from Sarah Rector. I'm one of the grandchildren. So our
Mhm.
father is Clarence Campbell and Bobby Campbell, and Bobby Campbell is still with us. So
Okay.
Sarah Rector has a daughter-in-law and four living grandchildren.
Wow, very good, very good, very good. And Miss Sharice, you're over there and
Yes,
at the end of my
I'm here.
screen.
Last but not least, unfortunately, I wish my uncle could have been on here, which is the fourth grandchild. His
Yeah.
name is Darren Campbell. And my name, as I said before, my Sharice Campbell Robley. I was born and raised in Kansas City. My mom is Sharon. I moved to Minnesota in 94, where I still reside to this day in 2025. It's unbelievable. And also, it's the home of the Koch brothers, who actually have ties to Sarah Rector in some way, but I'm sure we'll dig into that much later on. But thanks for having us, and I'm so grateful to be here tonight. Thank you so much.
You are more than welcome. Well, one of the reasons we're here, as we know, a film is being made about your grandmother. And most of the film will focus on her life as a child. She was a young girl when she had received her land allotment. And of course, as we all know, the larger part of the story, oil was discovered on her allotted land. Um, I'm curious how you all, as members of the family, feel about the fact that they are making a film, even though it's not going to cover her entire life, it's just focusing on her childhood. But how do you feel about the fact that a film is being made and it's a feature film? It's going to be in, on the large screen in theaters. What is your reaction to that? Sharon, I'll start with you.
Totally ecstatic. I
Okay.
never once, yes. And I say that because my journey, although it started in researching Sarah Rector further, when I was 22 years old. I'm 72, so that's 50 years ago.
Wow.
However, yeah, however, I have a very keen memory with regard to Sarah Rector. She was very much a part of all of our lives up
Mhm.
until the point of her passing in 1967.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah,
So you're looking forward to the film. I assume you're going to be all there eagerly in
yes,
line at the theater
front
box
and
office.
center. And I brought that 22 up because we have been wanting, my parents wanted this to happen many years ago, which is why my dad spent a great deal of time researching and trying to find out about her property and other things. So with that, um, I just never thought that this
Hmm.
would come to fruition in my lifetime.
Well, let me
Yes,
ask
so
a
I'm,
question. I'll follow up on that. I mean,
yeah,
so you knew her. I would assume she's a member of the family. How
yes.
many people, even I'm sure children of royalty in many countries of the world, they know their parents as mom and dad, and they know their family as family. You knew your grandmother as your grandmother. Did you know her story? Or was she, grandma? What did you know about her story in terms of her early life? Did you know that growing up?
I knew bits and pieces
Okay.
growing up, but nothing with regard to my parents sharing her her vast wealth, and I didn't understand that until she
Mhm.
was way gone.
Sure.
However, I do have several fond memories with Sarah Rector.
Hmm.
Yes.
Well, I'll ask others as well. Cheryl, did you have knowledge of her story? And I mean, her story, not just that, oh, she had money or she could afford to buy this, that, or the other, or maybe a house or a car or whatever, but did you have knowledge of how people were sort of after her for her wealth? Did you know that part of the story?
I knew about her wealth. I knew about her story, how it all came about. I mean, my father spoke of her quite often. So we all grew up with her story.
Hmm.
We've heard it many, many years. I mean, our entire lives. And my dad spent a lot of time researching and trying to recover some of, of her legacy,
Okay.
over our years. So
Okay.
yes, so
Now,
we've heard a
just for
lot of different
clarification, now
stories.
who was your father then? This would be one of her children from her
Yes,
marriage to Kenneth Campbell, is that correct?
correct. Yes.
Okay, which child would that be?
Clarence Campbell, the youngest.
Okay. Oh, the youngest. Okay. Very good. Very good to know that.
She had three
And
sons, and he was the youngest, and he had 8 kids. He wanted 10, but anyway.
wow, be
Eight
fruitful and
boys to be
multiply.
exact.
My goodness. Okay, that's very interesting. Charisse, I'm curious in terms of how much you knew yourself. I mean, obviously you all are growing up around each other. You may have shared stories, but when did Sarah's story, sort of the headlining stories, become part of what you knew about your grandmother?
I feel really blessed because I was able to be with my mom and her siblings and my grandparents from when I was born in 1970 to 1993 when my grandfather passed away. So I was 23 years old. So I got to grow with him throughout my whole life. So I think it was around the age of either 16 when I realized who my great grandmother was. And I think around 21 is when it really sunk in when we were in the call paper. That's when it really sunk
Ah,
in for me that, hey, I'm coming from this lineage, this powerful, strong lineage that I really don't know nothing about or even how to wrap my hands around it. So yeah, it's pretty amazing, at the age
wow.
of 55 now, and look here we are. It's pretty amazing.
Incredible.
Mhm.
That's amazing.
Wow, I go
And her
back as far as my
namesake, Sarah, I want to hear from you. You've got her name. Did you know the story that went along with the name Sarah?
I'm like everyone else. I just knew bits and pieces about it, and I always wondered, because my three older sisters, I wondered why me, like why did I get her name? And my mom shared with me actually recently that Sarah was asking Dad to name one of us after her, and she had been
Oh,
asking for years. And so they
really?
finally did it. And so my dad went to her and he was like, okay, we did it. My youngest, her name is Sarah, and she was elated, according to my mom. She was
Okay.
elated. She said, finally, you named one after me after all these years.
After
So
all.
it's a blessing and a curse sometimes, because there's so much. It's a legacy, and it's a heavy, because you think about all these things, and all of us have had times in which we've researched her, we've wondered who she was. I thought it was like a mythical person. I didn't know it was like a real person, is what it felt like to me.
Right.
But then as all these, over the years, we've gone back and forth to Oklahoma, and we've done so many things as a family. And then my dad was ever so present with us and told us about her. And it would bring so much joy to his face just talking about her. But it also brought pain, because he passed before he could really get to the things that
Oh,
he wanted to get to. So this is all super, super exciting. And it's wonderful to really see her come to life. It's like now we really get to know who Sarah is, because this brings her to life. So it's very exciting.
wow. That's absolutely amazing. Now, your dad was the youngest. What about your other uncles? And of course, you have tons of myriad of cousins out there too. Do you think that her story was known widespread throughout, I'll just say, the descendant group? I mean, there are many branches. Every family has many branches on the tree, every sibling who has their own children and grandchildren and so on. But would you say collectively, it's been sort of almost an individual process to find more of that story? And anyone can answer that. I won't direct it to one single person. I'll start with the namesake, Sarah. Okay. So,
Um, I think everybody has had like their individual journey, getting to know Sarah and what Sarah was about.
okay.
I think she means something different to everybody.
Oh, sure.
And so I think it's been a journey. It's been an amazing
Wow.
journey for years. We grew up with our cousins. And we spent a lot of time with them, and we kind of grew up more like sisters and brothers, and that
Okay.
type of thing. So as we began to get older, and everybody was kind of having their own Sarah Rector journey, we all had different stories, and how we we
Yes.
just enlighten each other with our own experiences. And every time we go back to Oklahoma, we learn something new.
Wow.
So
That's
it's
amazing. You made me think of another question. Where are all the different branches? Is everybody mostly in still Kansas City area? Or well, we know one of you is up there in the deep freeze up there in Minnesota. But are there other parts of the country where different branches of the family have settled? Anyone can handle that. Miss Sharon, I see you kind of nodding there. You may know as the
Yes,
elder of the group.
I think I had a great relationship with my grandmother. I can recall birthdays and birthday celebrations,
Mhm.
going back as far as 4 years old. And then on my fifth birthday, she had an article placed in the Kansas City Call, which I have the
Oh,
original.
oh,
My mom gave it
wow.
to me years later. However, at 5 years old, I had like 30 or 40 something children at my fifth birthday.
Well,
So
that's
that stands
impressive.
out. Yes,
I
yes.
didn't
And
know 30 or
throughout the
40
years,
people at that age.
oh,
Wow.
just kids from our neighborhood at 2600
Okay.
Lock Ridge. So
Wow.
that was pretty fantastic. In regard to going to school, kindergarten, there were some days that she sent her driver, as well as herself, to drop me off at school and sometimes pick me up in the evenings and return me home. I can recall many days that in her picking me up, she would stop off at various stores. And I didn't understand at that time, I was far too young. Even at 10 years old, I didn't understand her power at that time. But I do understand that she would leave me, like she'd have her driver drive us to this one store, and it was called Emery Bird There. I'll never, ever forget it because it was at 12th and Petticoat Lane. The entire building was pink, and it had these huge big balls in every archway of the store, these beautiful pink flowers. So when we would pull up to it, she'd tell Leroy he'd come out, get out of the car, and walk around to the passenger back, open the door, and let her out. So when she would get out, I automatically thought I was getting out with her. And she turned around and said, "No, you have to stay in the car, and I'll be right back out." So, I start bawling and crying. I remember it like yesterday because once I lost sight of her, that's when I really started to cry. And the driver, Leroy, says, "Don't cry. She'll be right back. Come on, you want to drive? You want to get here with me to distract me? I know this today." I didn't know it then. However, in climbing over the front seat, I had a dress on. So my right knee got hung up in the hem of my dress and I actually fell over the
Oh,
front seat. And at that time in her car, her rear view mirror was mounted to the top of the dashboard. So the left side of my head connected with it. It also cut it. So he had, yeah, I had a little gash and I still have it there today. It's gone nowhere. It's still there as a reminder. But at any rate, when she came out, needless to say, I was in trouble, but not enough trouble to where she didn't stop to get my butterscotch swirl ice cream, which was one of my favorites.
oh, well, that's a
I
sweet
have a
story.
lot of
That's wonderful. Well,
memories
I'm
with her.
curious. You mentioned, of course, the 35 children at your party, but
Yeah.
it appears though that there were other, cousins because you had uncles and whatever. I don't know if she had a sister. I don't think she did, but or if your dad rather had sisters, but uh, there are other
Yeah, she
cousins.
had sisters and she had other siblings.
Okay, but what
Yeah.
about
Mhm.
I'm thinking of though your dad's siblings.
I knew
Are
very
all of
well
you
of my
all
two uncles.
are you all
I
still in Kansas City or where are the
Now, my father's older brothers all passed away before he did.
where did they
That would
live?
be Leonard. Leonard lived in Kansas
Kansas
City at
City.
the time as he passed.
Okay.
And Kenneth also lived. In fact, he lived across the street from us at 2631 Lockridge. So he
Wow.
passed in the early 60s. And I can't recall the year that my uncle Leonard passed away. I just know that he was 63, which is kind of odd because Sarah was 63, Leonard was 63 when he passed, including
Wow.
our father was 63 years old.
Oh, wow.
So, but
That's
I have
amazing.
very fond memories of both of them. Kenneth, the
Did they have
older, and
children?
Uncle Leonard.
Did the uncles have children?
Kenneth did not. And my Uncle Leonard had one daughter. She passed away, oh my God, 30, 40 years ago. So
Mm.
that
So
would be
are
it.
there other than descendant cousins? Did she have children? That one daughter, did she have children? Do you
No, she
remember?
passed really early in life. I believe her to be between 20 and 22 years old.
Oh, wow, how very sad. I'm sorry
Yeah.
to hear that. Wow, my goodness. So
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. Well, let's talk about Sarah herself. You've already shared sort of a fascinating memory, I guess. I can imagine her coming back to the car and seeing her, you know,
Right. See,
seeing her
I didn't do
granddaughter
what she said
bleeding.
do. Yeah.
There may be blood coming out of your head. But
Yeah.
are there other favorite stories that some of you have? Now, some of you were born maybe after she had passed away, but maybe there are favorite stories that you've heard about her. Are there any stories that you'd like to share? I see Sarah's namesake smiling. Do you have a story to share with us, Sarah?
Well, the stories that I enjoyed the most when my older siblings or my dad would tell us the story. It was on her farm. That's where Sarah was more of just being herself. She didn't
Okay.
have to be anyone. She didn't have to showcase or anything like that. And my dad would go to the farm, and they would get ready to prepare dinner. And so Sarah and my dad would go out in the field there and pick up the chickens, and they would both pick up 2 chickens each, and they would ring them themselves.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, and she
I
was
got to
out
see
there
that.
and she did that, and then they would take them inside and then prepare them for dinner. But I just can't really fathom or imagine her being in the Rector mansion, but then being in the farm, and she's out in the field and wringing chickens' necks and
Wow.
preparing dinner.
Where was the
So
farm located?
it was in Kansas City, Kansas.
Oh, on the Kansas side of the state line.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Oh,
So
how
that was I
2600
just have one more
Ridgeview.
short one to tell you, because this one always brings a smile to my face. My older sister, Sandra, she loved going to the farm and she had a favorite pig. And she loved this pig. She named the pig. She always looked forward to going to Sarah's farm so she could see this pig. Well, one day they sat down for dinner, and she says, I didn't see Charlie. Where's Charlie?" And someone said,
on your plate.
"Yes, you're eating Charlie." And she was so upset about it. But it's just,
Oh,
that was just the family times. That was like our
sure.
safe place to gather and just enjoy each other. So those are my favorite stories.
Oh, okay. Well, Cheryl, do you have a favorite story about your grandmother?
Yes, I would say just learning about her lifestyle. When she had her wealth, they said that she entertained, she was a huge entertainer, and celebrities and artists will come from all parts of the, United States to just hang out and have a great time with her. She was very generous and welcoming, and her place was the place to hang out. And I just
Okay.
thought that was interesting. My dad.
Okay. Do you know if that contrasted with the family memory of her? She sounds like she was a good country woman. Of course, she was a country woman. She was from Taft. That's a small town.
Mhm.
And people in Taft had land allotments. They had farms. So of course she knew what it was like. You kill the chicken, you eat the chicken, you pluck the chicken and what have you. Um, but then there was her city life. Kansas City, everybody thinks of 12th Street and Vine. Well, she's 12th and Euclid, certainly where the family lived. But, you know, she may have been social on one part of her life, but she was a country woman as well. And it sounds like she still maintained some of that country life, growing up in the Creek Nation, growing up on the soil, um, which is kind of interesting. It's almost like the 2 lives of Sarah Rector, so to speak, which is
Exactly.
kind of
You can
interesting.
take the girl out of the country, but not the country out of the girl.
There you go. And I see Sharice over there nodding in
That's
agreement.
good.
What do you
That's
have to
good.
share? Sharice, do you have a favorite story or memory, or as you even reflect on things that maybe you've learned about her in recent years, is there something that grabs you in particular?
Well, I just think the story itself, I've never met. I mean, I'm 55, so in my lifetime, I've done a lot of different things and met a lot of different people from all walks of life. And I've never met anyone with such a story as this, which
Mhm.
makes me, at this age, really sit back and really reflect on what it must have been like for her, or what it not must have, but what it might have been like for her. Those are my thoughts now.
Mhm.
Coming up through, 1907 all the way to 1967, going through Jim Crow. I think about her and my grandparents, what they
Mhm.
all must have experienced and the strength that it must have took. So from
Yes.
that, I gained strength in my own life and what I deal with on a daily basis in work and private life.
Yeah.
If that
Well,
makes sense.
It does. It does. And one of the things particularly that just popped in my mind. Now, of course, her oil was discovered on her property. She was a Creek freedman, descendant of people who were Creek freedmen as well. And there's an entire rich history, and I don't know if you all have had an opportunity to explore a little bit of that history. Um, Creeks, of course, came, during the years of Indian removal in the 1830s, and they brought enslaved people with them.
Right.
And their history is truly amazing because even prior to emancipation, there were people who were emerging because keep in mind, these are people who are bilingual. Sarah's grandparents probably spoke little to no English. Muskogee would have been their mother tongue. But there were people who are amazing, and I enjoy Creek history. Some of my favorite people, and myself as a historian and researcher about Oklahoma freedmen from all five tribes, which is what I research, freedmen from all five tribes. Some of the favorite people that I have come from the Creek Nation. There is Cow Tom, who was a major leader. There was Silas Jefferson, also an interpreter. Cow Tom was bilingual interpreter as well. Sugar T. George, one of my favorite people from the Muskogee Nation. He was served with the Indian Home Guards, which was one of 3 Union regiments out of Indian Territory. The rest of the 24 plus regiments during the Civil War out of Indian Territory, people don't know this, were all Confederates. And Sugar George and others, Ketch Barnett and others, served in the Union Army and as interpreters and soldiers, and amazingly rich history. Have you all had a chance to explore your Creek ancestry, not just names on an enrollment card or a name to put on a family tree, but have you all had a chance to explore some of that history, incredibly rich history of Creek freedmen who were movers and shakers in Indian Territory history? Have any of you had a chance to go farther with that richness? Because she was sort of at that tail end. She was born in 1902. The
Yeah.
Dawes Commission had been underway since 1898. And the purpose of the Dawes Commission was to redistribute land to the people who already owned the land, because land was owned in common. If you and I were next door neighbors, my cow could go and graze in your pasture and vice versa, because all the land belonged to everyone. But now, because the goal was to lead towards Oklahoma becoming a state, which did happen in 1907, but the idea was to introduce private parcels of land. Gonna fence it off. You can't get any further than my fence, and my cows can't get any further and go into your pasture and go beyond the fence. Private parcels of land. In the Creek Nation, everyone got approximately 160 acres of land. That's how Sarah got her land. She was allotted, as everyone was on the Dawes roll. Even the babies were allotted 160 acres of land. And so, but as I said, after this process had already been underway when she was even born. So by the time they discovered oil on her property, she's growing up still now in the state of Oklahoma, because statehood was 07. But now it's different. Indian Territory history has not gone, but has moved. Time has moved on, and now it's early 20th century history. Have you all had an opportunity? And I'll start with Sharon as the elder in the group. Have you had a chance to explore what that Creek history consisted of?
Somewhat, and I became aware of some of the siblings of Sarah Rector by researching her own history along with my parents.
Okay.
My earliest recollection, I was about 22 years old, the first trip I made with my parents. And in printing all this material with regard to Sarah, her land allotments, and then being able to drive to them some of the land allotments, and we actually stood on ground with. So that was something else than to watch my father and his experience just in standing on that land with regard to the Dawes list. She has several brothers and sisters, and of course, both of her parents. And in researching Sarah, we also did a little research on her parents because my dad couldn't recall some of the history with him. So in looking at that, there were several brothers and sisters. There was Joseph and several other. I can't recall them currently.
Sure.
I haven't seen it in years, but there. That's how I became aware of the dolls list and all of her other brothers and sisters. The only
Wow.
sister that I know of Sarah was Rosa.
Mm-hmm.
Rosa Brown, and she passed in 1992. We also
Oh,
had a very
wow.
close relationship with all of the Rectors and the Browns and the Gibbs.
Okay,
Yeah.
wonderful. Oh, that's really great to hear that. Certainly, I hope that you all will have a chance to meet others from the Creek Nation. One thing I do like, and I hope they've kept it in the film, we'll find out when it certainly hits the big screen. Um, and a lot of people understand, which was sort of, I guess, the early part of the Great Migration, Kansas City being one of those destination cities. In fact, I would encourage you to just, if you have an old high school yearbook, go through it. I'll bet many of your classmates are descendants of freedmen from one of the five tribes because so many people left Oklahoma and went right to Kansas City. And
Yeah.
Kansas City is a hotbed for freedmen descendants. And there are plenty of people who don't know this history, though. And it's so incredible a history to have and to explore. But I guess one of the things that I am at least happy to see, and hope we'll see it in the film, at least I do recall seeing a little piece of it, is that you see just in passing some little playmates that Sarah had. And you see Herbert, and I think her name was Scylla or Sylvia Sells, Sells, and the Sells children. You need to know their name. They would have been friends. They were all in Taft, but sadly, their story was a tragic one, which is one reason why Sarah's story is so remarkable, because they were literally murdered for their land allotments. Someone had paid a gentleman in the area, another freedman descendant, I believe, to put some dynamite underneath their house. And the one, I guess, where the one explosion was the strongest was under the little girl's bedroom. And sadly, she died a very painful death because it started a fire and they could not remove the embers and rescue her. But you'll see Sells children in the film as well. And this is a part of the realistic story. I've heard others talk about the fact that people left Muskogee County, and some ended up in Kansas City, some went other places, saying it's too dangerous, just get out of there. And that's probably in relation to what happened to the Sells children. Sarah was able to hold on to her land. She did go to Tuskegee, I understand, because many of the historically Black institutions had preparatory schools up until like maybe the late 1930s and early 1940s. Most of your HBCUs actually had preparatory schools, and she went to Tuskegee. I believe she may have gone to Fisk as well, but she was able to be safe. And of course, later, of course, she married and went on with her life. Thankfully, the fact that she did get away is what makes her story so important. And because she did live to adulthood and did live to enjoy her riches, as I ask. So, did your family ever hear of any of the stories and the stories that affected the children? Because Sarah was not only the only child of oil wealth. There were the Sells children. There was little Danny Tucker, who was another oil child. There were the Manuel children. But of course, hers is probably the most resilient of the stories that we've heard. I think there was something that had happened with the finances of Danny Tucker. And I don't know if it was when he was a young adult or when, but did you all hear any of those other stories? What happened to some of the other children or some of the other attempts, you know, that they had guardians appointed to Black children and even to some of the Native children, the Indian children as well. I see, Sharice, you're nodding. You may have
Yeah.
heard some stories.
I didn't realize it was so many. It wasn't just like a few, it was hundreds of them.
Well,
And-
in terms of the oil stories, definitely. But what happened was, in many cases, guardians were appointed for minor children, although they didn't need guardians. Sarah had parents,
Right.
but she had, you know, she was not an orphan child.
Yeah,
But
it looked like they appointed the kids that had oil with these white guardians, whereas the kids that had land, that had parents, and they may have been poor, funny, those kids got their parents were their guardians.
right,
So
right.
that was that I found that to be a little odd.
Well, they declared the
Yeah.
owner of the oil-rich land as incompetent.
Right, of course.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
that did happen.
So they can rule the land. They can-
And in
Exactly.
many cases, they took a lot of that money and enriched themselves. So
Correct.
that did
Yeah.
happen too. So, but did any of you hear from either your parents or grandparents, or uncles and aunties, any other similar stories of, well, you know, why the family had pretty much removed itself from Oklahoma at all, or and it may not have been necessarily something you would have heard growing up in a big city, you know, it was not part of everyday life, but I don't know if any of you heard these stories.
I didn't necessarily hear it
Me
from my family, but just throughout doing research. Like I said, everybody had their own journeys with doing research on Sarah and different times going back and forth to Oklahoma. But I did hear some stories about some of the kids that did perish, unfortunately. And, you know, they took their land from them. And honestly, I feel like if Booker T and W.B. Du Bois didn't get involved in Sarah's life, then maybe her life would have been different. I know when she went to Tuskegee to go to school, when she turned 18, she was out of there, but she was not going back to Oklahoma because it was still dangerous. It was very, very dangerous
Very
for
dangerous.
anyone, for African Americans that had oil, had money, had land. It was extremely dangerous. And so her family had already migrated. And that was one of the reasons that her family migrated to Kansas City, despite the fact that Kansas City was booming in the early 1920s. 12th Street corridor and Vine and the Jazz District just blew up literally in Kansas City. But when she turned 18, she decided to go there with her family and meet them there as well. But we did have, and Sharon can give more backstory on this, but we did have relatives that lived on the reservation. That was part of the Muskogee Creek Nation. That I unfortunately wasn't old enough to go and visit them, but Sharon did, so she can give you a little bit more backstory on that.
Let's hear more about that, Sharon.
Well, I do know that we had relatives that resided in all the different cities that she ended up owning properties in, which is Sapulpa County, Wagner, Okmulgee, Taft. Yes, got to visit one family or our family there in Sapulpa County, which are the Stricklands. And then to meet Danny Joe, and he is in Okmulgee.
Okay. Oh,
and I do
Okmulgee's the
know
capital of the Creek Nation. Wow.
exactly. Yes, yes. So, and then some of the properties that they still reside on today, my understanding was that Danny Joe built his home on one of her properties there in Okmulgee. So when we would go visit to Oklahoma, we actually got to stay with him, and he had 3 kids at that time. I have no idea what he's doing today, you know.
Wow.
So, but yes, we have
Well,
other
you've
relatives in
answered
all the
one
counties.
of my
Yeah.
questions, because I had wanted to know if she had maintained ties to Oklahoma. So clearly so. And I'm just sort of curious, you know, I guess there is still there's still possibly family still there, cousins or what have you may still be in Oklahoma. And they may not even be aware of Sarah's legacy, or do you think that they may be?
Oh, absolutely, I do.
Okay. Okay.
I remember Kermit the most because
Okay.
we stayed in his home. We stayed in Danny Joe's home in Okmulgee. But in Sapulpa County, where Kermit Strickland lived, he was also the police chief. And he had to be, I guess, around 40, 50 years old at that time. I don't even know if he's still living today, but I remember his hospitality. He treated us just like who we were, family, getting up, cooking
Oh,
breakfast for, and there had to be about, what, 15, 20 of us. The first time I went down was for her funeral. The second time we went down, it was actually on vacation with my parents. So,
okay.
and then the last time I went down, we went to look at the home that Danny Joe built himself on a tract of her land there in Okmulgee. So we
Okay. Now,
do
was it land that she must have later purchased because
purchase,
her
right?
land, her allotted land was basically around Taft or part of the area on the Cimarron River. And by the way, those wells are still pumping. I think she may have sold a portion of her land in the 1930s or 40s. I'm not sure when that may have happened. I don't know if you all are aware when she may have done that, because she bought other properties, I know, in Kansas City as well. So,
No, I
uh,
went to each of her properties there
okay,
in Kansas City, Missouri. In fact, we grew up in living in one of her properties there at
okay,
2600 Lockridge. Sarah, our grandmother, also lived on Lockridge. Her home is 5 bedroom, 2 bath at 2607 Lockridge. And then her oldest son moved into one of her properties at 2631 Lockridge. So we were very close in as far as family living together there and on the same block and seeing everybody every day. So
yes.
yeah, I recall all of that.
Wow. Are any of these homes still standing today, to your knowledge?
Yes, Sarah's home is still, oh my God, we just went to look at it about a week ago, in fact, and I hadn't been over there in a many of year. But her property, so whoever purchased it has done very well, exceedingly well for the location in
Hmm.
which it sits. But it's a beautiful home. They really put
Lovely.
some money into it. So it's a
Oh,
gorgeous
that's so
home
good to
today.
know.
Yes, and where
Wow.
we lived at is now a vacant lot. And then one of the other, whoever lives on at 2631, that home was torn down. And I know this because we talked to some of the people there that were outside when we went to view the properties a week ago. They were having some kind of event going on. So everybody was out and eating barbecue and having a good time. And one of the ladies shared with us that the person that lives on the corner about they called her Miss Crawford. But anyway, Miss Rector, our grandmother, where 2631 is now a part of his property. So he built this huge home on these two properties. So it's
Are they
still a good
aware
thing.
that this is formerly Sarah Rector's property? They do
Yes,
know
we
that.
were shocked that they knew her
Oh,
by name
oh,
and shared with
okay.
us how Sarah. I really rode with my sister Sarah. We were out touring some of her properties from back in the day,
Wow.
about a week ago.
Oh, how wonderful. That's really
Yeah,
exciting. Oh, my
Yeah,
goodness.
so
and
she
then
actually has
she'll
the two properties that are still here. 2000 East 12th Street is the Rector Mansion. And then the home that she lived in at 2607 Lockridge are the two properties in Kansas City that are still standing today.
Are
And they're
there,
both on the historical
well,
registry as well.
I know that the Rector Mansion, 12th and Euclid, of course, everybody knows where that is. Is there a historical marker there?
Not
Or
yet.
not yet. I hope that something will happen and there needs to be. But also it would be nice to maybe see something in some of the properties that she used to own. Her farm in Kansas, on the Kansas side of the state line. Um, is that still in the family? Was it sold? Whatever happened to her farm?
It
It was
was
sold.
sold.
It
Yes.
was.
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's very interesting. Well, there's so much, of course, to her story. And of course, I know that she died, what, 1967? Was that the year she
Yes.
passed away?
Yes.
Okay. Were you all
On a
present?
Saturday morning at 11:15 to be exact.
Had she been ill? What were the circumstances around her death?
No, she had not. Well, in fact, that morning, my mom was up, I was up. My dad was sleeping because he was working two jobs in Ford Motors where he was. He worked
Wow.
nights. So at any
Okay.
rate, the phone rang. My mother told me to get it. I did. And they wanted to speak with dad. And I said, he's sleeping. And so they said, well, where's Bobby? And I said, wait a minute. So I ran and got her. She was upstairs. I was in the living room watching cartoons while the other kids were sleeping. However, when she came downstairs to answer the phone in the kitchen, to keep from disturbing our dad because he was asleep and he got in late in the morning from Ford. However, I knew it had to be something serious, and I can still hear that today. Her dropping the kitchen phone and screaming in the
Mm.
kitchen, oh my God, no, no, no. So I got out of my dad's recliner, ran in the kitchen and said, Mom, what's the matter? What's the matter? And she says, go get Mary, go get Mary. I can't do this. And I'm going, you can't do what, Mom? She said, just go get Mary. And that
Oh,
was her
wow.
friend that lived directly across the street from us. And I knocked on the door, ran across the street, got Mary Washington, said, Mom, need to see you right away. And then when she came on over, naturally, my mom told me to go on upstairs. I need to talk to her. Of course, I went
Mm.
out of sight. I didn't go upstairs. And I wanted to hear, and she was
Mm.
beside herself because she didn't know how to tell my dad that his mom had passed.
Mm.
So, in getting her, she asked her, she told her, there's no way I can wake him up and tell him anything like this. So Mary said, I'll go up. So they both went upstairs and I went on the tail end and
Mm.
stuck my head in the bedroom and watching my dad, who was asleep. And my mom shook and shook, Clarence, Clarence, you got to wake up. Clarence, you got to wake up. And my dad sit up and I can see it like I can see today. And my mom was standing at the foot of the bed. Mary's on the side of the bed. And she was saying, Clarence, you need to sit up. I need you to sit up so I know that you are awake. Clarence, are you up? So he finally sit up on the side of the bed, and she said, I got something to tell you, Clarence, and it's going to be hard to listen to, but we need you awake for this. And my dad was just looking up at him like, what? And she says to him, I hate to tell you this, but your
Mm.
mom just passed away. And the only reason I know the time, because they had a big clock over their headboard, and that clock said 11:15. And I'm standing here, and my dad just all at once, I don't know what made him, but he just hit the headboard. No way, no way. And it was something else
Mm.
to
So
see
what
him.
month was that? What time of the year was that?
July, July,
July. Bless her
yeah,
heart.
July
Wow.
22nd.
So she had a funeral in Kansas City or back in Oklahoma, or
He had three. I went to all three.
really, where were they?
The first one was at Bruce Watkins' um, funeral home. And then the second funeral was the following day, and it would happen to be at C.K. Crawford. And the Crawford house, which I didn't know until we actually got there, that I'm going, wow, that's the house that I used to play in. I did
Mm.
not know at 14 that the house that I used to play in when I was 6 and 7 and 10 years old, that that house was no longer hers, but in fact had become a funeral home.
Oh,
So her
wow.
second funeral was actually held in a property that she used to own.
Wow.
And 3 days later, we all drove, or my parents and all of the family, whatever, drove to Oklahoma, where we did her final funeral. And drove to the cemetery there in Taft. And then it was in
Mhm.
Taft that I learned that the cemetery that she was buried in,
Blackjack, yes.
Blackjack, she actually owned.
Really? Was that part of
Yeah,
her land allotment or something she acquired later?
something she acquired later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. Oh my goodness. Have you had a chance to visit it in recent years, since that time to visit
No,
her gravesite?
actually, no. I've not gone back to Oklahoma since my father passed.
What
May
year did your
13th,
father pass?
93, May 13th at 93.
1993. Oh, it's been a while then, definitely.
Yes. So
Wow.
I
Sarah,
kind of,
you and Sharice didn't you? You guys went to Oklahoma.
did we? I don't recall.
Sharice and Sarah.
Oh, I know Sarah and Sharice went. Did we ever go together, Sharice? Where is she?
There she
Here.
is.
No, the last time we went to Oklahoma was in April of 2023. I'm sorry. April of 2023 is when me and Sarah.
Yeah.
So what part of Oklahoma did you have a chance to visit?
Oh, wow. We went to Okmulgee. We went to like 3 different areas and went to the some county courthouses to look up records. That's where we found that the oil, you're right, the oil is still pumping, and we found that it's owned by the United States
Yes, it is.
government.
Yes.
And yeah, so
If you
yeah.
get to Oklahoma, within the next year or so, I have a friend who lives in Tulsa who can take you to the site where the Rector wells are pumping. And he can, take you right up there. And in fact, the next time I'm in Tulsa, he's going to take me to the Rector wells, and you'll still see the name Rector, in fact.
I
And
think it'd be great if you go there, you let us know when you go and we'll meet you there.
okay,
Absolutely.
certainly let you know.
All of us, we will meet you.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be something? Yeah.
Wow,
We would
that is
love to.
amazing.
Yeah.
And let me
Oh,
add one
of
thing. We
course.
did go back. That's how I found out that her headstone had been changed. See, when I was there, we stayed there for about 4 days after the funeral there in Taft. And the headstone actually said her name,
Yes, it
Sarah.
did not have her married name, and I
Right.
know
It was
she
in
preferred
Rector.
that name.
Yeah, it was
Yes,
in Rector. But then the last time that I went back down there, um, it said Aunt Sister.
yes,
So I had
it
to
says
ask
that.
my mom, why is that? Why, who changed it? And why, see, the headstone was on the ground, the flat
It's a
headstone.
flag.
And
Yes.
then the next time I went, it was the one that kind of stood up so far, and it had Aunt Sister. And I had never heard that name before. So
Well,
my mom
from what
explained to
I
me,
understand, that was a name that some of her nieces and nephews or
yes, they changed it.
and they called her that, which is fine. That was maybe a family name. But I thought when I saw it, and I'll have to check again on Find a Grave, but I thought it said, and I could see if it's aunt sister, but I thought I saw aunt, comma, sister. And my reaction was,
And it
wait,
is. It is a comma
a
between.
mother and a grandmother. She was not only an aunt, she was not only a sister, in
Yes.
spite of the term aunt sister, which could have been a favorite name that
It's
some
very
people call
misleading. Like she had no children, let
her,
alone
right, and that
grand.
concerned me. And I was like, wow, that's kind of
Yeah.
odd. Not sure, but nothing should stop you from putting a second stone there.
Oh,
Her
we
gravesite,
intend.
it's a gravesite. You can
In
always
time,
put
we
a
will.
little monument.
Yes.
And it's something that, she was a grandmother, she was a mother, and she was a wife also when she passed away.
Yes.
So you certainly, even though her fame was that as Sarah Rector, but her life was lived as Sarah Campbell and then later Sarah Howard. And from what I understand,
No,
didn't
Crawford. Crawford.
Crawford, I'm sorry,
Crawford.
and Howard from.
Her,
Oh,
her last husband was William Crawford, which I remember him like yesterday as well, because at the latter part of his life, he had dementia real bad. So as opposed to putting him in a home, he actually lived with us for a little bit over a year.
Is that
And
right?
then, yes, he did. We lived at 5412. I remember it like yesterday. I used to
Well,
like
let
to
me
hear him
ask this
sing because he
question.
would sing and beat the pots and pans with spoons and
Oh,
so I would run up and tell Dad he's back in the kitchen again. He's on the floor. He got all the pots and pans out and he's beating them with the spoons. And my dad would say, "Okay, leave him alone. I'll be down in just a minute." So there you go.
let me ask a
He was a
question. Do
nice
you
man.
have pictures of your dad and your grandparents and your grandfather? I mean, all of these are part of the Rector family history and the Campbell family history. She did not have children with Mr. Crawford.
Crawford. No,
No.
no. My dad was final.
Okay, so, but there is the Campbell family history. And are there other images that the family has to share with the world? This is part of her life. She did live a full life, and in her adult life, she was not just Sarah Rector. She was Sarah Campbell. She was Sarah Crawford. So, are there other images that you all may have in family collections that someone could pull up the old trunk and see what's
I think we all have pictures of our father doing holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and things like that, or his birthday. With regard
let me say
to
that. Do you all
others,
have a family
all of
tree?
those were destroyed in the fire. Our house caught on fire,
Oh,
and all of that stuff like that
oh, I'm
burned
so
in the
sorry.
fire. Yeah.
When was the fire?
That was in what, 70?
Yeah.
Oh,
Toward the
wow.
end
Yeah,
of
it's in the,
this,
yeah,
end of
5412. And I can say that because I was 6 months pregnant with my only kid, so I can't forget it.
Oh,
And we
wow.
ended up they put us up at the Holiday Inn for a couple of weeks while they worked out the insurance, whatever. So they
Sure.
redid it, and then we went back to live at 5412.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Well, are there other things that you would want the world to know about your grandmother, about Sarah Rector Campbell
she
Crawford?
she loved
Yeah.
fashion also, which you
Oh,
may already know that she loved shopping and
Yeah.
she had the latest fashions. And that's another story that I love about her because I love fashion too. But
oh,
that she was quite into the latest fashion and she loved
And
looking,
perfumes. Yes.
yes, she loved looking great.
mm.
Absolutely. I remember her favorite two fragrances, which is Wind Song, which was a glass bottle with a gold top and the pink label on the front trimmed in gold. I also remember Jordan, glass bottle, green paper, green and gold writing on the front of it, like a 3 ounce bottle.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, yeah, she was quite a dresser. Absolutely. And I
Man.
loved her shoes most of all.
Oh,
Yeah,
does
she
does
wore
anyone,
fancy shoes.
are there any artifacts that she left behind or family heirlooms that um people still look at and oh, that was grandma's favorite, whatever
We did
dress?
have, at one point, we really did have a lot of her things, like her dining room set. I remember it. I wanted it so bad, and I asked my dad, "Can I have it?" But at any rate, we had her dining room set, and she had the most beautiful china cabinet. It was hand painted. I've never seen one like it, and I haven't seen one since.
Wow.
Where it was really tall, and the
Oh,
top of it was all wood, but it had these hand painted fruits on the front of it, like a round circle with bananas
oh,
and grapes and what have you, and the same thing on each side of it. And it had French doors. You open it out, and it had the little skeleton key right there in the front. So you turn the key,
wow.
you open the doors out, and my God, it was all red. It was red and then trimmed in this gold, like somebody spray painted that on there. You know what I mean? It's not what the whole thing, the whole cabinet on the inside was red, but around the top, bottom, and the sides, like it was just sprayed gold.
Mm.
But it was beautiful. And the shelves were just like the inside of the cabinet itself. The shelves were red, but when you look right there at the front of each shelf, it had that gold strip. It was amazing. And her china that was in it and her stereo system my mom and dad used to have at the foot of their bed. Some of her clothing hang in our basement, in our recreation room. There was 6 doors downstairs, one of which we weren't
Mhm.
allowed to go in anymore because her things were being stored in the far door on the left. When you go down the steps, you just go to the left. But at any rate, like I said, the house really took care of all of that. We couldn't, there was nothing left to it.
Oh,
I mean, it just gutted it up and down.
wow. That's heartbreaking. But I'm
Yeah.
glad you have that memory to share, which is
Oh,
certainly.
yeah. Sarah probably remembers a little bit of this because the day that it caught on fire, and I'm 6 months pregnant, and my mom says, "Get out, get out, get out." And I'm going, I'm going, I'm going. And so we came out. Now, Sarah was going to school, kindergarten,
Oh,
half
wow.
days. And she would go to school in the morning, but come home at 11:30. Now the fire started about 12:30, 1 o'clock. So
Wow.
mom told me to run out. I ran out. She ran out.
I
And then
remember.
mom hits herself in the head like, oh my God, Sarah's in the house. So, it's just, and the fireman pulled up, jumped off the truck, and my mom was running back and forth across the field. My
Oh,
daughter is up there. My daughter is up there. And so I know because I'm standing here and I want to go in with them. Of course, they wouldn't let me go because I'm 6 months pregnant.
no.
However, when they went to get Sarah, she had crawled out of our bedroom to the hall right there at the top of the steps. And I know that the firemen scared her because they had on these masks,
Of course. Of
smoke.
course.
And we could hear her screaming, good, no, stop. But they brought her out, man. And when she saw us, she was okay.
Oh,
But it
wow. Do
was
you
just
remember
something
that,
else.
Sarah?
Absolutely.
You do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was laying in the bed when they started breaking all the glass. And that's
Yes.
why I got out of the bed because they was breaking all the glass on top of me. So I
Oh,
got out of the bed and went to the top of the stairs, and then I just saw this big hose coming at me, this
Yes,
asbestos.
it would.
mask,
She's
and
5.
so I'm swinging at them, and
Yeah.
Oh,
I didn't know why they were there or what was going on, but yeah, I
And
remember
that
all of
fireman
it.
said, she's a good fighter for 5. She's a good fighter.
well, I'm
And
glad you
she
all
socked them
survived.
all upside the head. She was afraid, and naturally so at 5. But I'll
Wow.
never forget it.
Well, I'm glad you all
But
survived it and you're
you can
still here to
probably,
tell the story.
me too. You can probably tell that Sharon is our family historian.
Oh, absolutely. She's full of stories, which is
Yes.
wonderful.
Oh, I have several I've not even spoke about. I'm
Oh,
coming.
well, we'll
Yeah.
have to have another talk again for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, do you
Yeah.
all have any final words about Sarah that you want to share or want the world to know about her? People have, like I've said, people have latched onto Sarah's story for years and have done films or documentaries about her, some accurately, some not accurately at all. Uh, any final words, though, that you'd want listeners and viewers to know about your grandmother? That might be significant, or it might just be something very special to you.
That
Well,
she
for
was a
me,
grandmother.
yeah,
I'll
she
direct
was
that to
amazing.
any of you. Feel free to speak.
Yeah. She was an
I'll go.
amazing grandmother. There were a couple of things that she used to do, and it bothered me at the time. But then after I learned, as I got older, why and what. But oh my God, every other Sunday when she come to our house, I don't know what made her do it. Out of me, out of all the other kids, but she always wanted to comb my hair, and
Oh,
she was heavy-handed. And boy, I mean, felt like eons that she would part my hair straight down the middle and make 2 fat French braids going all the way to the back of my head, and then she would connect them.
okay.
And I didn't like it because she was heavy-handed. When she brushed, it was like, man, she's gonna pull my scalp off. Then she
Wow.
tell me, just sit right here. You're not gonna die. I'm gonna fix your hair. And I'm going, I know that's what I better do. And that's what I did. And
And
when I asked her, can we do a change? Can you fix it another way? And she said, yeah, baby, I'll fix it another way. And I was ecstatic, thinking, I'm happy because she always did it. I mean, this is for months and years that she would come do my hair like that. So when she changed it, she put the part from my left ear, top of my left ear, and went all the way across my head. The part came all the way around to my right ear. So you know what she did? She made a French braid going this way, and then the back one going over to my right ear, and she would connect them,
Oh,
braid them right
jeez.
together. And I'm thinking, when I go look in the mirror, I was so upset. And I told him I don't want her to do my hair no more because she always do the same thing.
That
And
is
my
funny.
dad said, shut up. You should be glad she's here doing your hair.
That's a great story. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
she
That's
was
wonderful.
amazing. She was
Well, and I
amazing.
think that just adds another dimension to Sarah's not just the icon. You know, we've seen the child, timid child in the plaid dress, looking kind of scared at the camera. We see she was a whole person. She grew to be a
Yeah,
woman, she married, she had children, grandchildren, and she lived a full life. And
yeah,
I think more than anything, it's good that you all can share that. She was, yes, she was a mother, she was a grandmother, she was an aunt,
yeah,
she was a sister. And I'm sure every part of the family that had relationship with her, they have their versions of their relationships with
mhm,
Sarah. And I think it's all important that we hear all of those stories. So
exactly. She's just
I would
gone
like to
way
say
too
that,
soon, way too soon.
yeah, I would just, what I would want the world to know that Sarah was strong. She
Resilient.
persevered. She endured systemic racism.
mhm.
She endured people hating her for what she had, who they thought she was, the material things that she had, the
Yes.
fact that she could go shopping in a department store where other African Americans could not do that.
Not
All the things that people thought she stood for, they hated her for it.
mm,
And she was trying to fit in here or fit in there. She didn't fit in with the Muskogee Creek Nation. She didn't fit in with other African Americans. She didn't fit in. She was just trying to find her place.
Yeah,
But what I want people to know and understand was she was strong and she was passionate and she did all those things. She lived her life,
yeah,
and her family was number one for her. That was what was most
yeah,
important for her. And that's what she passed down to our father, our parents, and all of us, that no matter what happens in your
right.
life, you can always, always, always count on your family. And that's what she stood for. And that's what she taught us.
Yeah.
that is absolutely beautiful.
Sharing
And
and
I think,
caring. I can
wow.
recall the many nights she would spend the night and sleep on our sofa just to get up
Mm,
and watch cartoons with us on Saturday morning. Now they
mm.
were a lot smaller, small kids, but I'm sure they still remember some of it. But because what was it? Mighty Mouse,
Yeah, I grew up watching that
Space
too.
Ghost. Yeah,
Yeah.
You're in
yeah,
my era.
yeah.
Well, I
But
just want to give a final word of what I think or what I would like the world to know about my great grandmother and being the first great granddaughter. It was me and my cousin Brian Kirk, who's not on here. We was the first two grandchildren for the first 12 years with my grandfather Clarence Campbell and my grandmother Bobby Campbell. And what's most important for me for the world to know and love in history like I do is I want the world to know someday what she actually went through with the government and the fight that she had with them over her land and how her land was extracted from her little by little till it was nothing. And the reasons why she had to end up selling the land, if in fact that's the reason, because I don't think we really know, or I don't think we really got to the core of the research to find out exactly what took place. But I do believe we're in the time where we will find out.
Exactly. Well
I
said.
want, I want to say, and actually Sarah said most of what I was going to say. Some people think, her property and the oil and her lifestyle was her legacy, and that's part of her legacy because that was real. but her family was really
Yeah.
her legacy. And although I don't personally have a lot of memories of her, I know her through my dad. And I can tell that she was an amazing mother because we had the best dad on earth.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Like our
Absolutely.
dad, like I said, he wanted 10 boys. And although he had 4 girls, he loved his girls just as much as he did his boys. And our father was very present in our lives. And we always joke about who was his favorite because he always made all of us feel like,
Like,
yeah,
right, like you were the only
like
girl, you
you were
know?
like you were his favorite, and he was just
Yeah.
that type of dad that he wanted you to know that you could talk to him at any time about anything. And I think what he got from her more than anything is the love of cooking and the love of food. He
Yeah.
was the most elaborate cook ever. And
Yeah.
he would make these huge Christmas and Thanksgiving meals with no help.
Whole life.
He would make the
Absolutely.
whole shebang in so many desserts, so many pies and
From
cakes,
scratch.
and he
From scratch.
loved it. Yes,
All
all
from
Yeah.
from scratch.
scratch.
He
German
absolutely
chocolate
loved
cake
it.
and yeah,
Sweet potato,
lemon.
lemon meringue
Yeah.
pie, all of it.
Yes,
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
My
Yeah.
whole life. My
yes,
whole life.
our whole
I felt
lives.
Yeah.
so blessed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Because I
I've
know a
yet
lot
to
of
meet a
kids,
man
a lot of
that could
kids.
cook as well as dad.
No.
Even
Wow.
my husband of 40 years, I would tell him sometimes, yeah, well, not exactly, but close.
Yeah.
You know, that's better. Say, I sure hate it, baby, but you're close. That's all I can tell you. You're close.
Well, one of the things that I've been able to just gather from what you have all shared was that um, just as Sarah Rector kept her land, Sarah Campbell, Sarah Crawford kept her family intact as well, and just as strongly. She kept the grip on her land and carried it into her adult life, and she kept her family intact. And I think that it's something that is part of that story. And I'm so happy that you all are sharing it, and I'm hoping to hear more stories. And if there are elders who are still alive who even remember her, maybe you all can find, oh, Miss So-and-so still alive. They went to the same church. Anyone who had contact with her, because that's all part of her world. And just as we know she was a mother and a grandmother, and she was a sister and she was an aunt, all of those stories collectively are still part of her legacy that's
Yeah.
intact. And I think that that's a tremendous, tremendous lesson to learn. And I have to thank you all for sharing a part of her with
Yeah.
me this evening. And I hope we hear from more of you. I also will stay in touch with you. So when I do get back to Oklahoma and get a chance to go and maybe see the Rector Wells, we can all meet there and drink a
Yeah.
toast to Miss Sarah by
Yeah.
all.
That was
So,
something else she didn't do.
That would be
She
great.
didn't smoke cigarettes and she didn't drink liquor. And I
wow.
would watch her and my dad in the kitchen cooking Thanksgiving and or Christmas dinner. And I'm going like, well, now my dad was a smoker and so am I. But at
Yeah.
any rate, I never, ever, ever saw that. So she didn't
Well,
smoke and she didn't
I'm
drink.
glad you shared that, because someday there may be another film about her in her adult life, and you may
Yeah.
see her sitting back in a Chase lounge smoking something. I'm
Mhm.
glad you who knew her can say
Yeah.
no, she never smoked, she never drank.
Nope. Not
Um,
ever.
keep her legacy intact,
I love
as
it.
you all have done. And I just want to thank you all for your time. It has been a real pleasure speaking with Sharon and Sarah and Cheryl and Sharice. And bless you all. And I Miss Sarah Rector Campbell Crawford is up there smiling right now
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
family. So thank you all very much.
No, thank
And
you.
Thank you for
it
having
has
us.
been just a real, 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 real pleasure. So